You're listening to the Platte River Bard.
Farris Naff is a recently accomplished playwright who is debuting his new play, The Cleanup Lady. Clay is an author and has been an award-winning journalist, a correspondent for the United Press International in Tokyo, a freelance reporter for National Public Radio, Newsweek, the Huffington Post, Earth Magazine, the Humanist, and Scientific American, just to name a few. He has been a science and religion correspondent for the Metanexus Institute and the executive director of Lincoln Literacy.
Lincoln Literacy began as a nonprofit that helped people who grew up here or in other American communities and hadn't learned to read or write well enough to improve those skills. And it still does that. But over the years, it became much, much more involved with the refugee and immigrant communities, helping adults who had grown up in many other countries to learn English and then acquire the job skills they needed to be able to survive and then eventually thrive here. So over the almost 2 decades that I headed that organization, I got to know and really admire many refugees, and to watch them overcome enormous difficulties and to put terrible trauma behind them and then go on and become productive members of our community just amazed and inspired me. So Sophie, the cleanup lady, is kind of an emblem of all of those people that I saw bring their talents to the fore.
Clay is a Nebraska gem and in the last few years has added Playwright to his long list of achievements. Last year, he debuted part of his first play, which you may have heard about or seen, Mix and Machinate, which addresses the tribalized nature about what we become, all taking place at a local public radio station. Now, part of the play debuted last summer at the 2023 First Flight Festival, and the full play went on to be performed at the 2023 Omaha Fringe Festival. Clay is now debuting his new play, The Cleanup Lady. When AI strikes, you need the Cleanup Lady, at the 2024 Omaha Fringe Festival from August 9th to the 11th at the Benson Theater, one of the Omaha Fringe's 4 venues. There will also be a preview performance in Lincoln on August 4th at the Eastmont Senior Living Center and open to the public.
The Cleanup Lady is about a company that uses an AI machine to invest in other people's money.
And their shtick is they use an AI machine to invest people's money. And they, not only that, but to get ahead, they take down the ethical guardrails that this artificial intelligence has. So it makes some pretty unusual investments that lead to consternation within the firm, and eventually it spreads beyond that.
Clay wrote The Cleanup Lady out of his continued interest and curiosity in AI, and how this technology will affect our lives and in the future, because, like the internet, there are some problems with AI.
But AI particularly interested me because I thought it was beginning to advance, and the potential for it to change the world has always been evident to me. And I don't claim anything special about me, but I was talking to people who could see in some detail what it could do if they made a few more breakthroughs on this and that. And so yes, I think pretty much everybody knows somewhere around 2008, 2009, our phones got smart, and they began to get smarter pretty quickly. At first, you had to have very agile thumbs to text, and then pretty soon you could talk to your phone, and it would turn what you said into text. At first, it was often hilariously bad at that, but it got smarter and smarter. Those were the things that were going on that were making me think the world is going to change in a big way again. I mean, the internet changed everything. But I thought the next big wave to crest is going to be AI, and I want to be up on the, if not riding the wave, at least on the lifeguards platform with binoculars watching what's going on.
But true to his optimistic nature, Clay shares a positive outlook about AI and our future.
It will certainly be a huge upheaval in years to come. But I have to say from the outset that although AI is a major component of the play, it's really about people.
Okay.
And the whole issue of AI is really still in our hands. So what we do with it is up to people.
Sure.
And that conversation hasn't played out enough yet for sensible solutions to really come to the fore. I don't know that my play will spark that, but at least I hope it will amuse people. It's a comedy, and I hope it'll get them thinking, not only about the technology, but about the people who deploy it.
Clay's writing style has evolved and taught him about what things he needed to learn in order to succeed at writing.
Along the way, we have to deal with the problems that we've always had. In addition to artificial intelligence, one of my strong interests in science is human nature studies. And I have to admit a personal reason for this. Early in life, like many other people who aspire to write, I wanted to be a novelist. And I tried my hand at it a few times, and I failed. And eventually I realized that I was failing because I didn't have a good enough grasp of human nature and how it plays out in different personalities, the way that great novelists seem to instinctively. And since I didn't have the instincts, I started really trying to come at it a different way. And it just happened that my interest coincided with a time when human nature studies were flourishing in science. A segment of it is called evolutionary psychology, and some people know it as that. But the larger field is human nature studies, and I have learned so much from it about people and why they behave the way that they do. And that emerges in a minor way in this play. It doesn't become explicit except for one patch near the end, but I think it's really a subterranean theme throughout the play.
And join us now for this enjoyable conversation with the talented Clay Farris Naff about his new play, The Cleanup Lady. You won't want to miss it. For tickets and information, go to www.cleanuplady.com. And for information about the Omaha Fringe Festival, go to omahafringe.org. And now, let's hear all of our interview with Clay Farris Naff. All right. Hello, and welcome to the Flat River Bard. This is Chris Berger.
And I'm Sherry Berger.
And we are here today with Clay Farris Naff. He is a playwright and also a friend of mine because I have worked with this man before, and he is just fantastic. Thank you for inviting us into your home out here in Lincoln.
Oh, so glad to have you both here. And Chris, you brought my first play to stage here in Lincoln last year. I'm eternally grateful for that.
Oh, I am very grateful as
great
well.
to reconnect.
I tell you, we had a great time with it. We did Mix and Machinate out at First Flight. We did the first the first part of it, the whole big setup. It kind of set up the characters and the situation. It went over really well. I was so happy. Thank you for writing such a wonderful piece for me to sort of my first, all by myself, nobody gives me advice, directing job. And what a great piece to sort of, for my maiden voyage. It was easy. It was easy. We got laughs, which is great.
Yeah.
That makes me so happy. And the audience really seemed to like it. And I think we came in like second place and overall. So I think we did a good job.
Oh, yeah. You took it and sailed into safe harbor.
We everybody did a good job. I was so proud of everybody. So
And I got to do a little bit of audio for you guys.
yes, you did.
Oh, that was fun.
And she did a little audio commercial for us.
I did.
Or Station ID, I think it was.
Yeah.
It was great. So, no, we had a great time. And he is back. Of course, you staged the full thing at Fringe.
That's right. Omaha Fringe Festival last year. The play ran just under an hour.
Yeah.
And audiences there loved it too.
Yes.
We got voted second in Best of Fest audience rating, so that just pleased us no end.
Yeah.
That's great.
It's a good play, and it was very sort of timely, as is this one, that we're going to talk about here. Once again, coming back to Fringe, which will be August 9th through 11th. in Omaha. This one's going to be, you guys are doing yours at the Benson?
At the
location?
beautiful Benson Theater where we were last summer.
It's
Yeah,
in
I'm so
Benson.
glad to be
I know.
back there.
God, it's such a great space.
It's a wonderful theater.
I'll see anything there. Yeah, what a great space. And this one, once again, very timely, is called The Cleanup Lady.
Yeah. Now, the title doesn't give all that much of an impression of the play, but the tagline, I think, might. It's, when AI strikes, you need the cleanup lady.
Ah, AI.
Yeah,
There it
artificial
is.
intelligence.
Okay, so AI, that is, man, that's on everybody's mind right now. And we're all we do now, it seems like when we go on social media, we're looking at pictures and going, is that real?
Yeah.
What is that?
And then the whole conversation about not using artists.
Right.
So,
And there
as
are
well.
yes, and there
So
are
you've got
companies that are
a
boycotting.
debate happening.
Yes, AI. There are companies whose customers are revolting because they used AI material,
You're right.
and it's a huge deal right now.
I don't think people have yet appreciated what a big deal it is, but certainly every creative person has to be alarmed by this. And
Yes.
I say that as somebody with no ability to create images whatsoever from my own skill, but I do write, and I know that AI can write a sonnet in a fraction of a minute.
Yes.
It would take me hours. If I worked for a greetings card company, I'd be tearing my hair out,
Oh my
because how
gosh.
can anybody ever hope to do that when there's AI that can do it for next to nothing and almost instantaneously?
Yeah, well, I mean, I know that was part of the issue with the big WGA writers' strike here a while back.
That's right.
Was the use of AI in putting together scripts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, this is going to be potentially putting people out of work.
You're right. It will certainly be a huge upheaval in years to come.
Yeah.
But I have to say from the outset that although AI is a major component of the play, it's really about people.
Okay.
And the whole issue of AI is really still in our hands. So what we do with it is up to people.
Sure.
And that conversation hasn't played out enough yet for sensible solutions to really come to the fore.
Yeah,
I don't know that my play will spark that, but at least I hope it will amuse people. It's a comedy, and I hope it'll get them thinking, not only about the technology, but about the people who deploy it.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. Now, and we were talking a little bit. Of course, you always haven't been a playwright your entire life. You've done
You're right.
many different things, and one of the things you said you did for a while was you were a journalist, which is
Yes.
kind of where some of this interest in AI, a deeper interest, comes from.
You're absolutely right. Early in my career, I was a fairly general journalist. I covered all sorts of things. I had the good fortune to report from Japan for a number of years.
Neat.
But as I got older, I rediscovered my childhood interest in science, and I qualified as a science writer. So for the last decade or so, I was the science correspondent for the Humanist magazine. And during that period, I really got deeply interested in artificial intelligence. Before it was able to talk back to us or anything, I was really fascinated by the implications for the future. I wrote a couple of cover stories for the magazine about AI. And I contributed a chapter to a book about technology and what it means for humanity.
Yeah.
And as I foresaw it at that time, I thought that this will displace a lot of people from work, but maybe if we're smart, we can redeploy those people in areas where human-to-human contact is so important, like helping people with mental health issues, helping mentor kids, and so on. I have to say, though, the AI is so capable now. I'm not sure those roles will still be open.
I know.
I
that's the
hope they
thing.
will, but I'm not sure.
They're throwing so much money. Literally, I remember trillions are being thrown at it right now. Literal trillions of
You're
dollars.
right.
And we all know when that happens, things tend to advance very quickly.
Yep, they do. It's astonishing how much progress is made week to week, not
Yeah.
just year to year, but
For sure.
things are changing very, very fast.
Oh, my gosh.
Hopefully this play will still be relevant when it's on stage in August.
It will. It will. Oh, my God. Have you now, this is a little different. Is this a one-person play?
No. This has a cast of 6.
This has a cast of 6. Okay,
Yep.
okay.
It's set in a startup firm. And I have to tell you that the very origin of this play was, while I was thinking about AI and trying out some of the early chat tools, the cryptocurrency firm, FTX, imploded. Maybe
Okay.
you remember that a couple of years ago
I've
now.
heard about that.
Sam Bankman-Fried was the well-known head of this, and I was really appalled as the facts emerged from that to realize how irresponsible they had been with billions of other people's money. And so that really sparked me to think about how we entrust people who are smooth talkers
Yes.
with so much responsibility, and if they're not ethically grounded people, they just go off the rails. So I created this fictional startup finance firm called Colossal DX.
All right.
And that gets unpacked over the course of the play, but we'll leave it at that for now.
Okay.
And their shtick is they use an AI machine to invest people's money. And they, not only that, but to get ahead, they take down the ethical guardrails that this artificial intelligence has. So it makes some pretty unusual investments that lead to consternation within the firm, and eventually it spreads beyond that. And hired at this firm is a humble refugee whose job is to clean the office, but unknown to her bosses, she actually has tech skills. She was a programmer back in her home country before the oppressive politics there forced her to flee. And if they would listen to her, she feels she could help them out of this dilemma, but they're very dismissive of her. Like certain tech firms that we've heard about, sexism is a big problem in this firm. So besides that, there are also, at least some of them are rather bigoted. They're not too keen on having refugees or immigrants around. So she kept getting shunted to the side until she doesn't. When things get really desperate, then she comes to the fore. And I don't want to spoil it for anybody, so I'll leave it there. But it's very much a story that involves human beings. AI does appear as a character in it, but the leading roles are all played by people. And in fact, the AI is portrayed by a woman who was in Mix and Machinate last year, who will do a fantastic job in this role. And deep behind this story is the original Cinderella story. It is a rags to riches story in a sense. There is a romantic thread, but I think people who see it will agree that it's quite a modern twist on the Cinderella story.
Excellent.
What an interesting idea. So when did you decide to get into playwriting?
As I was nearing retirement in 2022, I thought about what I would want to occupy my time afterwards. And I've loved theater all my life. I have 2 daughters. The older one showed acting talent at the age of 4.
Oh, wow.
And so I took her to tryouts for the community playhouse Christmas play. We were living in Lubbock, Texas at the time. And she got a role in that, and then she went on. So I spent basically her entire childhood until she became a surly teenager and said, "Dad, I don't want to be seen with you." But up until that point, I was a stage dad. And I've continued to love theater. She became a professional actor, by the way, and worked out of New York for a number of years. But she and her husband, who's also an actor, the 2 of them decided to move to New Zealand just months ahead of the pandemic. Of course, they had no idea it was coming.
Of course,
But they worked once they were in New Zealand, they worked in other fields, and now they've returned to acting and directing. And
They still out
down
in
there.
New Zealand? Yeah?
Yep.
I would say New Zealand fared rather well during the pandemic, so...
They did.
Yes.
But it was hairy going for all of us.
I bet it was.
Right.
For quite a while.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
What a beautiful
I'm going
place.
astray. It's a lovely, lovely place, and I'm glad for them. But all of that kept me oriented toward theater. And then I discovered the Angels Theater Company here, which nurtures local playwrights. So I thought, I'll give it a try.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
nice.
I wrote a sketch for them, which eventually evolved into my play Mix and Machinate.
Okay.
And by then I was completely hooked. So that really is the centerpiece of my daily life in retirement. And I love it. And it's so rewarding for me. And I've managed to amuse a few other people, so that makes me even happier.
Well, your love of writing has certainly evolved, and you were also the former executive director of the Lincoln Literacy.
Yes, local nonprofit.
Yeah.
And that has also shaped the themes that I write about, because Lincoln Literacy began as a nonprofit that helped people who grew up here or in other American communities and hadn't learned to read or write well enough to improve those skills. And it still does that. But over the years, it became much, much more involved with the refugee and immigrant communities, helping adults who had grown up in many other countries to learn English and then acquire the job skills they needed to be able to survive and then eventually thrive here.
Very nice.
So over the almost 2 decades that I headed that organization, I got to know and really admire many refugees, and to watch them overcome enormous difficulties and to put terrible trauma behind them and then go on and become productive members of our community just amazed and inspired me. So Sophie, the cleanup lady, is kind of an emblem of all of those people that I saw bring their talents to the fore.
Yeah.
And so what interested you in AI specifically? You were writing for the Humanist magazine.
Yes.
And so that was just part of some of the assignments that came since you were in the science correspondent? Or?
I did write about a number of different topics for them, but AI particularly interested me because I thought it was beginning to advance, and the potential for it to change the world has always been evident to me. And I don't claim anything special about me, but I was talking to people who could see in some detail what it could do if they made a few more breakthroughs on this and that. And so yes, I think pretty much everybody knows somewhere around 2008, 2009, our phones got smart, and
Yes.
they began to get smarter pretty quickly. At first, you had to have very agile thumbs to text, and then pretty soon you could talk to your phone, and it would turn what you said into text.
Yes.
At first, it was often hilariously bad at that, but it got smarter and smarter. Those were the things that were going on that were making me think the world is going to change in a big way again. I mean, the internet changed everything.
It was such a big thing. Yeah.
But I thought the next big wave to crest is going to be AI, and I want to be up on the, if not riding the wave, at least on the lifeguards platform with binoculars watching what's going on.
I'm with you. I think I want to be on the lifeguards platform.
Yeah, and I think that's more or less where I am. I'm pretty well informed about it, but I'm certainly no expert. But I knew enough to want to do something with that knowledge, and I poured a lot of it into this play.
Interesting. So I'm looking at the cover art right now. Is this a rendition of the people you have cast right
It's
now?
actually not. I have to confess to you, it's an image created by artificial intelligence.
That's perfect, though. That's perfect.
And then improved a little bit, my brother and I. My youngest brother, Brian, is quite capable with graphics, and
Okay.
so he's been an invaluable help to me.
I didn't know if it was kind of like, how Pixar does it when they have somebody have an actor be a character, and
Oh, a
they
lot of
kind
times
of
they'll model it after their face a little bit.
Yeah, they make
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you
that part
what,
of it look like them.
if this play moves to Broadway, then I'm going to hire
There you
Pixar
go.
There you go. There you go.
to do my PR campaign for me here.
But I've seen AI news like overseas, right?
Oh,
So,
God,
like,
are there AI news sites now?
It looks like a real person giving the news.
I'm actually not specifically aware of that, but it's definitely possible. AI can, just since last year, it's developed the ability to take text prompts and turn them into video. And they can.
I think they were talking, I think I read something the other day where the response time now from when you're chatting with it is down to like, what do they say, 15 nanoseconds or something ridiculous. So, it's instantaneous.
It's effectively instantaneous,
Yeah.
faster than we can pick up on. One of the big downsides to this is it takes a huge amount of energy to do all of this.
I was reading about that too.
Yeah.
Is the carbon footprint of all these places
boy.
because the amount of energy is staggering.
Interesting.
Now, I have to say that doesn't come up in my play. I wanted to keep the story tight and
Sure.
The focus on, as I said, people, not technology. But surrounding the theme of AI are all kinds of difficult issues that we as society, as a planetary civilization, have to figure out. And we don't have much time to do it. So
Yeah,
it's
we're barreling towards it.
good idea to be aware.
Right.
Yeah. All the usual jokes. That's, for all of us older folks that grew up, we're watching war games or watching Terminator, and we're like, wow, it's, yeah, look what they're doing.
So are you part of the Angels collective
I am.
playwriting? Okay,
Yeah.
so you're getting feedback as you're writing your plays from the collective.
And actually, Angels did me a huge service last fall. This play, in an earlier form, got a workshop reading by 6 actors.
Nice.
And I was able to get a small audience, most of whom were people I knew who were willing to be there. And I thought going into that, this play is done. I just want to hear it read.
Yeah.
But when I heard it and when I got feedback from people, I realized, no, this ending doesn't work.
Oh, okay.
It's too expository. It doesn't really bring the story to a close. So I had another several months of hard work to put in on it before I came to really satisfactory ending, in which all the character conflicts get resolved, and we have a bit of a payoff at the end, I hope.
Okay. Oh, yes.
That sounds interesting.
But that Angels was great for that. Apart from the, opportunities to sit with other playwrights and read bits and pieces and get feedback there. It's hugely advanced my ability as a playwright over the past couple of years.
Yeah,
Were
that's
you-
just invaluable.
Were you ever tempted to put it in Chat GPT and get feedback on
Well,
on
actually, yes.
how it's written?
Yes. I don't remember if it's on that flyer. I think it is at the top of the flyer as a joke, because it hasn't been reviewed yet. You know how?
Yeah, I saw
these
the
things-
review. Yeah.
So I put it.
You reviewed your play. That's
Yeah, I put a chunk of the synopsis into ChatGPT and
Okay.
said, "What do you think of this play?" And then I put
that's good.
on the flyer. I put, "See the play that ChatGPT calls." And
Intriguing, hilarious, and timely, blending elements of technology, corporate intrigue, and a classic underdog narrative.
you go.
Fantastic. What a great,
Underdog narrative.
it's a great review.
and and it's authentically a quote from ChatGPT.
Our computer overlords approve.
So hopefully people will get the irony. I want to say seriously, there are about half a dozen of these really well-developed large language models like ChatGPT. And as a playwright, I have gone to them when I've gotten creatively stuck at times. And I've given them a chunk of text and said, I can't figure out how to get past this knot in the plot, or the dialogue here just doesn't seem quite right to me. What would you suggest if you were a playwright? And I haven't ever taken anything back from it and just put it into the play, but I've gotten some really good suggestions from it.
Ideas. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Interesting.
Huh.
So there's a need for it in that way.
It's very versatile, and although you can never trust it wholly to be factual, and I think many of them have a bias toward flattering you because they aim to please. That's the algorithm.
Yeah.
You can never take it for granted that it's telling you the truth or that it's
That's what I've heard.
not just flattering you.
Yeah.
But if you take it as you would advice from anybody with a grain of salt and think about it yourself, it can be very helpful to prompt you through or over creative hurdles, which I think every writer runs into, and that's certainly true of me.
Sure.
I have a hard time getting past something very often, changing my frame of reference so that I can see it from a different angle and find the way forward.
Wow.
Interesting. It's like, it's like being able to submit it for a quick review or whatever, and getting a quick opinion. And even if you don't agree or like any of the opinion, like you said, it might spark something or give you an idea, or, oh, I didn't think of that.
Yep, it's true.
Interesting.
So I think it's a very useful technology already if you approach it knowing that you can't fully trust it.
Yeah. Right.
There are people who've made foolish mistakes. I think most famously, maybe a lawyer, instead of writing his own brief, he just asked ChatGPT to do it.
I heard about
submitted
that.
And it was a good brief, except all the cases were made up. Because that's what it does.
Yes, it makes stuff up. I read about that. Yes.
So, you don't want to do something like that. And besides that, if you are an author or the creator of any work, you really want to be the creator of that work.
Yeah.
So I think AI has a role to play as an advisor, as a listening board, but not as the primary source of production.
I agree. As a helper, or as an aid to creativity, I have no problem with it. But I understood Hollywood's panic over it, especially the writers. They're like, whoa, hold on, because we know corporations. We're not dumb. Hey, this computer program's way cheaper than paying a person.
Right.
No, wrong. Let's stop here. Get some rules. Which it was nice to see people putting their foot down and not just sort of trusting the process or whatever. It's like, no. Not when it gets handed over to big corporations. Don't do that.
I so deeply agree with that. Yeah. And I think actors were solidly with the writers because they see that they have a stake in this as well.
Yes.
Everybody has a stake in it.
For sure.
So far, I can't think of any occupation or skill that can't eventually be eroded by artificial intelligence.
No.
Unless we find ways to make it a helper rather than a usurper.
Yes. And I think that's going to be the struggle, probably for at least for the next decade, is getting it on the road to be a helper rather than a replacer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Along the way, we have to deal with the problems that we've always had. In addition to artificial intelligence, one of my strong interests in science is human nature studies. And I have to admit a personal reason for this. Early in life, like many other people who aspire to write, I wanted to be a novelist. Okay. And I tried my hand at it a few times, and I failed. And eventually I realized that I was failing because I didn't have a good enough grasp of human nature and how it plays out in different personalities, the way that great novelists seem to instinctively. And since I didn't have the instincts, I started really trying to come at it a different way. And it just happened that my interest coincided with a time when human nature studies were flourishing in science. A segment of it is called evolutionary psychology, and some people know it as that. But the larger field is human nature studies, and I have learned so much from it about people and why they behave the way that they do. And that emerges in a minor way in this play. It doesn't become explicit except for one patch near the end. But I think it's really a subterranean theme throughout the play because, as I said earlier on, my interest in this was sparked by the astonishing arrogance of those young people who took billions of dollars and lavished it on themselves in the Bahamas and then dishonestly used people's investments to make risky bets of their own. That's not the first time, and probably not the last time that's happened.
For sure.
But it was particularly notable in that situation because they had such pretensions to being morally superior to those who'd gone before them. They talked about effective altruism and things like that, and it all turned out to be bullshit.
Yes, exactly. They turned out to be just like just as bad as all these other corporations and people that they had, I'm sure, complained about in their younger days. Yeah.
So that prompted me to ask and explore in this play some questions. Why do people repeatedly do that, and why do people repeatedly fall for that?
Yes.
And also to ask the question, what constrains some people to be decent and honest and ethical? And I have a tentative grasp on some answers, and I bring some of those to the fore in the play. But as I said earlier, I realized I don't want it to be too expository.
Okay.
It's not a Sunday sermon. It's an entertainment.
Okay, sure. And it is a comedy.
Right. It's definitely a comedy.
For sure.
But I wanted to air some of that, at least to get people thinking about it a bit. So that's in the play. And I'll just say, without commenting on the details of the play, that it seems to me that institutions of the state and institutions of the private sector are so important to constraining people's behavior in ways that are mutually beneficial that we really can't afford to let them get eroded. There's a lot of distrust at the moment of institutions, and much of the distrust has been earned. But the answer isn't to burn down the institutions; it's to strengthen them.
Right, and there is a lot of that attitude, especially with the younger folks, where they just want to burn it down and start over. It's like that's the wrong answer.
It is. If people had a clear grasp of history, and I'm not talking about the history that you find in textbooks, but prehistory history.
Yeah.
Before we had institutions of civilization, it was literally anarchy, and people got murdered at rates that are inconceivable today. Just as people used to die in pandemics at rates that are inconceivable to us now.
Yes.
We went through a painful pandemic. The death rate was 0.3% of those who caught the disease, which was pretty much all of us.
Right.
A century earlier, 10% of Americans died in the Spanish flu.
That's staggering.
That's staggering. But go back 1,000 years to the Black Death in Europe.
Oof.
1 out of every 3 people died.
Yeah. Europe lost a third of its population.
There weren't any mask deniers in those days because everybody was dying all around them. We just have no idea how cosseted we are.
Yes.
And we don't understand what gives us the privilege of not experiencing the horrors that our ancestors lived through. So then we talk casually about burn it all down. But if people really understood what that meant, they wouldn't be so quick to do it.
Exactly. No, I completely agree. I find the human nature study stuff really fascinating, especially since you've really sort of looked into that quite a bit. And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but as a director, I find that really fascinating. And now I want to ask you, and if you don't have an answer for this, don't worry about it. But now I want to ask you, were there any books that you came across or speakers that you went, this was really valuable? Because as a director, I now find myself wanting to look for some of that stuff.
Yeah, actually, I appreciate that question. There are many books that have really expanded my mind and deepened my thinking. But I think at the top of my pantheon of intellectual heroes is Steven Pinker, psychologist at Harvard. And among his books, the first one that really I was already interested in human nature studies, but this really put it into perspective for me. It's a book at least 20 years old now called The Blank Slate.
Okay.
And it was about the modern denial of human nature. And he effectively refutes that throughout this book. But then about 10 years ago, he wrote a book called The Better Angels of Our Nature, taking a quote from Abraham Lincoln.
Sure.
And in that, he really explores the implications of human nature and how social development came to contain human nature within structures that make it much more productive and give us much better lives. And I'll just mention two things that I think come up in it. One that pleased me very much because I was at the time the director of Lincoln Literacy was, he said the development of literacy spread and deepened empathy tremendously. He points out that up until that point, executions were days out for entertainment for much of the populace of England and France and probably other countries.
Spectator sport.
Yeah.
Which is mind-blowing to me.
Exactly. Mind-blowing. And these were really hideous executions in many cases. There were hangings, of course, but they also had drawing and quartering.
Yes.
Ugh.
Right.
And even in Shakespeare's time, when Shakespeare's wonderful plays were being put on stage, they also had bear baiting as a sport and other terrible entertainments in which animals were goaded to tear each other apart and fight to the death.
Oh.
Yeah.
With the spread of literacy, he says, people began to take the point of view of others in ways they never had before. Up until then, he suggests that people might think about what their family members were thinking about and try to figure that out. Or maybe if they had a romantic interest, they'd try to sort that out. But they had never really thought about, well, take the Merchant of Venice, for example. What's it like to be a Jew if you're a Christian?
Exactly.
They just hadn't given it any thought. But as theater obviously conveyed this, and then as books began to be published, he suggests that this really moderated the violent impulses by drawing on the better angels of our nature, our capacity for empathy and our ability to extend that beyond our immediate family members is one of our most important characteristics that emerges in an organized society with things like libraries, where anybody can get hold of a book.
Yes.
So that was one really important thing that he brought up. And then another one was the development of institutions that gave the state a monopoly on violence. And this is something that became controversial just a few years ago with the murder of George Floyd.
Yes.
Because there you have the state empowering a police officer to kill under some circumstances.
For sure.
And that was obviously, blatantly, and sadistically abused.
Yes.
So a lot of young people felt, well, the hell with that. Let's not give the state a monopoly on violence. Let's take it into our own hands.
Yeah.
But even though that was egregious, and I went out and protested myself and still feel outraged by it, there is no better mechanism than we know of to prevent people from just practicing violence on one another than to make it illegal to do that with the force of the state to back it up.
Right.
And we have far from perfected the justice system. It's in many ways lamentable, but it's the best thing that we've got to contain violence. So
For sure.
those are some of the ideas that came up in that context. And now when I see football games, I think, I'm not the world's greatest football fan, but it sure is better than the old days when villages just raided each other.
Right.
Yes.
For entertainment.
Isn't it though? We're a
Yeah.
little better than the old gladiator games.
Right.
And speaking of bear baiting, they had their they did their animal stuff there.
Yeah.
I find it fascinating though, your point of and how he talked about how as literacy spread, so did empathy, and it created more empathy in regular folks being able to relate to other people, and how of course. I am still a reader and a big reader, but I grew up reading. But a lot of younger folks, especially my daughter, and it kills me because I read to her growing up. We always read. She used to be a big reader, and now kids get out of school and they're like, well, if I don't have to read, then I'm not going to.
Yeah.
And a lot of people talk about how reading is sort of on the decline in a lot of ways, and it occurs to me, look what we see. We seem to be getting a little bit detached from that empathy thing, and we seem to have less empathy. And maybe that's just me, and I'm not thinking right, but
Well,
isn't that interesting?
Yeah. It very much concerns me that people aren't reading books as much as they used to, because reading a book is an experience very different from watching a TV show.
Yes.
Or watching something on your phone, or have to say, listening to a podcast.
For sure. Absolutely.
They're all quite different. The great thing about a book is that it engages you over days and weeks, occasionally months,
Depending, yes.
with the same set of themes, characters if it's fiction, or themes if it's nonfiction. And in that way, I think your mind becomes changed by it. Now, that can happen from watching a movie, or indeed, you can learn new things that you never forget listening to a podcast.
Sure.
But the chances are less that you'll really retain a fine-grained set of new perceptions, feelings, or thoughts compared with the experience of reading a book.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And I've even heard that, who was saying it? It was someone who would know. It was some sort of psychologist, and they were talking about even just digital reading versus reading a physical book. Is that just the act of reading the physical book, turning the pages, holding it in your hand, psychologically cements it even further in you.
It feels that way to me.
Which makes sense to me, because that's what our psychology teacher always taught us. In psychology class, it's like you say it, you read it, you write it, you say it, and it's all these different methods of
learning.
It reinforces,
Exactly, yeah.
Right.
and it reinforces and puts it even further, not just in your short-term memory, but now you're trying to house it in your long-term memory.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that I just got off on that, but as soon as you said literacy and empathy, that completely made sense to me. It's like, well, look what we're dealing with now, and there seems to be less empathy now. And
I'm not convinced there's less empathy. I hope not. I mean, I hope that there remains the same amount of empathy. I am concerned that we're narrowing the circle of trust. So I'm not sure if I can express this clearly, but I don't think people have become calloused or hard-hearted necessarily. But going back a dozen years or so, I think that it was easy to see every American as a fellow American, and if you were even more broad-minded than that, all of humanity. And now, because in part social media, which tends to tribalize us, but other factors as well, I think that people are expressing trust and empathy to a much smaller circle of people than they used to. It might just be their church. It might just be their fellow political travelers. It might just be any one of a number of ways that we divide ourselves up. But that's where the wall stops. And beyond the pale, as they used to say, we don't necessarily have the same feelings or provide the same degree of care for people outside that wall that we do for one another.
Fair enough.
And that's not good, because we are one world.
I know.
And we share the same fate as a world.
And I've come across some of the psychologists and all that, because we've had social media and the internet now for 20 years, and so we're getting these 20-year studies.
Yep.
And it's not good news.
No, it's not good news. No.
It's kind of bad for us.
Yeah. One of the other things that I've done in retirement is to join the board of a small Pittsburgh-based organization that tries to promote mental immunity. And the founder of this is a guy who wrote a book with the same title.
Okay.
Bact's hypothesis is that just as we have an adaptive immune system that recognizes and kills invading pathogens, our minds are invaded by mental viruses. We have an immune system that we can strengthen to identify those and screen them out. I think that's such an important skill that I am putting time, money, and effort into trying to help promote that. And in fact, I'm trying to organize a workshop for youth here for the fall to offer them that mental immunity training, because social media can be deadly,
Yes.
especially to vulnerable people, and that certainly includes many of the young.
I completely agree, and I'm of the mind, and and I don't know whether I sound like old man yelling at cloud here, but I'm of the mind that the internet and social media is not for children, and they should not be allowed on it, especially social media. Keep them off. If we want to make and I remember in the early days of computers, there used to be little kid sites, because that's when my daughter grew up. She was born in '92, so my daughter was early internet, and where they would have specific kid sites that they would go to, and they would go to the kid sites. If we want to make a kids internet, I'd be all for it. But if not, I don't know. And maybe I am an old man yelling at a cloud about that, but I think it's adults only, but I'm sure that's extremely unpopular.
Well, I don't know if that's necessarily.
But I agree that mental immunity. God, we need something.
Yeah.
Because kids are just.
It's another way
so
to
young. They take everything so personally.
Bully people.
Yeah, and then yes.
Yeah, and I mean, it's probably just like the Playboy that that you had underneath your bed when you were a teenager, right?
How did you know I had that?
I don't know what us girls did that was so bad. Well, maybe some of us who grew up, like myself, who grew up in a really strict household, we couldn't wear makeup or something like that.
Timid.
So, but we would always do it. I mean, so I would think that if I would think that would be really hard to actually execute.
I know, exactly.
Is what I'm saying.
How do you implement that? Exactly.
It's going to be either
It's
the makeup or the
impossible.
Playboy magazine, because it's still going to happen, probably.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
Well, we face interesting times.
I know. Yes. Good Lord. Isn't that nice that we live in interesting times?
Yeah.
So the play for this particular play, the plan for this play is right now it is, an hour?
Yeah, it's just under an hour.
Okay.
long.
About an hour. Okay.
So are you planning on expanding it into a full production? Are you going to keep it kind of that same?
I don't have any current plans because I think it truly is complete as it is.
Okay.
And that's perfect for a fringe festival.
For sure.
Maybe that's the whole life of this play. But I certainly want to see what happens in August. We're going to have a preview performance here in Lincoln on August 4th, and then it'll have a 3-performance run in Omaha, August 9th to 11th. If audiences respond the way that I hope they will, then might think about trying to find a new production home for it elsewhere.
Oh, okay.
But we'll have to wait and see. I'm working on actually 2 other plays now.
Nice.
And I have a short play that's out for consideration in various places. So not all of my eggs are in this one basket, but I do think that this is a play that has something that people will both enjoy encountering and come away with something to think about afterwards. So if it goes over well, might look for other possibilities for it.
So you have 2 plays that are in production stage then?
One very short one in production for the First Flight Festival in July, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's a little piece. It's a one-woman piece called Open Mic Night, about a shy woman who finally summons up her courage to try doing a comedy set at a comedy club, a stand-up set, and has to encounter a drunken heckler. And the audience doesn't actually see the heckler. they perceive him through her responses.
Okay.
But over the course of the short play, she has to come up with the courage not only to deliver her jokes, which I have to tell you are not, the best yet. She's working on it, yeah.
She's working on her jokes.
But also to deal with this really outrageous heckler.
Wow. So that makes 3 then.
So those are the 2 that are in production now.
The 2, and then Mix and Machinate.
That's on the
production,
shelf.
Yeah.
That went over well.
And then so this performance of the cleanup lady August 4th at Eastmont Performance Center, that's open to the public.
It is open to the public.
Oh,
yeah.
nice.
Okay.
And that's here in Lincoln.
That's here in Lincoln.
And how would someone go about being able to attend?
I actually have a website for this play called www.cleanuplady.com.
There we go.
And the details will be there. But Eastmont Performance Center is at the Eastmont Senior Living Center at 63rd and O. And this is going to be open to the public without ticketing or anything. It's a preview performance, so people shouldn't expect it to be exactly as it will on stage.
Right. Not a finished sort of polished product.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's a chance for the cast to do it before an audience, and for folks here in Lincoln who can't make the trek to Omaha to see it without a ticket. And hopefully it'll be a good experience all around. But the full production run will happen at the Benson Theater in Omaha, starting on Friday night, August 9th, and then Saturday evening performance and a matinee performance on that Sunday.
Nice.
So if you go on Friday and you love it, you can come back on Saturday and see it again Sunday.
Please.
I know I will.
The Benson Theater is such a
it's a gorgeous theater.
It really is.
So, have you seen it actually performed yet? Have you had a chance to do that, or just read?
I've just had the reading. I'm actually going to Omaha in about a week to see the rehearsal.
They're rehearsing, yeah.
Yep. Jean Sadi is directing. She directed Mix and Machinate in Omaha last year.
Cool.
And she's directing this piece. And I heard a little bit of it. I got a audio clip. I love the way that the actor who's playing the refugee has adopted a Slavic accent. We don't identify the country that she's come from,
sure.
but you can probably guess.
Yeah.
Anyway, a little touch of Boris and Natasha in there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That sounds great. Oh, what a fun production.
Yes.
I sure hope so.
And it's so nice to meet you, and just to see you blossoming from your creative writing days into playwriting. That's a really fun thing.
It's a wonderful way to spend my retirement.
Yeah.
And let me just say again, if people want more information, the cleanuplady.com is the website for the play. And if you go there, you can find out pretty much everything you want to know. And if you haven't found everything, there's a contact button there where you can send an email to me.
Oh, wonderful.
Perfect.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening and supporting the arts in the Platte River area and beyond. Please subscribe to our podcast so you are sure to catch all of our future episodes and join us on social media. See you next time on the Platte River Bard.